Welcome. You're listening to Literacy Now, the official podcast for the nonprofit organization Parents for Reading Justice, and I am your host, Brett Tingley. I am honored to have as our guest today Sonya Thomas, who leads a movement of powerful parents to disrupt inequities in education. Nashville P.R.O.P.E.L's mission is to organize and develop powerful parent leaders to ignite a movement that demands equitable education policies and practices in Nashville public education. So thank you so much for being here. I'm excited. I know we're on the Evidence Advocacy Center parent team together, but just to have you all by myself for a whole podcast, I love it. It's dreamy.
Well, I'm glad to be here, Brett. It's always, exciting to talk with you. We're both fiery. So when we get together, we like ignite sparks. So I'm excited.
It is actually, I think you're exactly right. I think the parents who do this work and are successful are just a little fiery. And
No, I said just a little bit.
I know that gets me in trouble at home sometimes, but in my professional work, I do tame it a little. But sometimes, I mean, that's kind of what you need to do the types of things that we're doing. So I appreciate you. Start out by just telling us like how you got into this work. So like, what is your why? What brought you to this?
So I'm a mother of four. I always tell people I'm the mother of many. I'm just somebody's mama that got pissed off. And it all started even with my own story. My own story is that I graduated with a 17 ACT and a 2.1 GPA. And I watched some of my friends go across this country and even in the state of Tennessee, go to the colleges and universities that I passed by every day. And so I wanted to make sure that my children were going to be successful. And so education became very, very important to me to the point of my first two children, they actually attended like private school when they were 3 years old and they were reading before they were five and they were writing in cursive. And
Wow.
so, of course, we're like, okay, this is great. This is amazing. And I thought that all kids were just taught how to read the same way. And so never in my wildest dreams did I think, okay, just because you go to a particular school, like you get taught to read differently. But fast forward, I have a son who is graduating this year. He was struggling early on when he went to kindergarten. He was struggling, they were having the meetings with me, they were doing interventions. And my advocacy for him became something that overtook my life. I
Mhm.
remember in 2018, I went through a parent advocacy fellowship where I learned that I wasn't alone, that many of the kids that lived in my very neighborhood were from struggling communities and their schools were not doing well and the kids were not doing well. And so myself and the other parents that went through that parent advocacy fellowship wanted to kind of like, hey, like we're getting this information. You know how people give you information. You say, okay, I'm taking in this information, but let me see if anybody else knows about this. And what we found out is that other parents in our neighborhood did not know that they were sending their kids to the lowest performing schools in the state of Tennessee.
Oh no.
They had no earthly idea. And so after that, we decided, okay, we want to do something about this. And that fall, I actually put my son CJ into another school. I pulled him out of the school that he was in and everything. And you know, his very first report card, I sat across from his teacher who told me that he was on task, he was prepared, his behavior was good. I knew it because I didn't play that, Brett. I didn't play going to school and acting up.
Yeah.
But he was in the seventh grade reading on a second grade reading level. So I do this work because I never want another parent or grandparent to feel the way that I felt when I realized that my son was not getting the education he needed and he deserved.
I think we are all in it for a similar reason. Thank you. Let me ask a question. is he dyslexic or just a curriculum casualty, meaning that, he didn't get what he needed, but he might not even be dyslexic?
There's a question that I asked everybody in Twitter world about, it's probably about 3.5 years ago. I asked the question, I tagged departments of education, both federal, state, and my question was, how does a parent know the difference between a struggling reader and poor instruction? And I'm going to say this, the answer to that was it was never given an answer on the internet. And when I would meet with these people, they could never answer me. Poor instruction causes struggling readers.
Yeah.
My son has processing issues, but no, he does not have dyslexia. He received poor instruction from the time he started his elementary school career. Day one.
Yeah, and the thing that's so extraordinary is in looking really closely at, and I don't know exactly what program they use, but the three queuing, if a kid is struggling, and look at the picture and guess if you don't know, and look at the context. That actually is teaching children the skills of poor readers, guessing. That is, in a sense, even worse because a kid isn't even dyslexic and the instruction creates the illiteracy. That is horrible.
Well, I mean, now that I know it started with phonemic awareness with him.
Yeah.
Like, let's go to the very first, I always call it characteristic, right? Or component that a child needs to get so that they can decode. And I say we have to go all the way back there where I can identify where he was given poor instruction. All the way back there, like from the start, the very first thing that a child needs, he did not get those foundational skills in the very beginning.
Yeah. Inexcusable. So your life's work is to make sure that all the other children, and that's exactly what we did. We figured out what was going on. Our kids happened to be dyslexic, but once you see that, like you say, you cannot unsee that. We know how to teach essentially every child to learn to read. And if we're not doing it,
It's criminal. It's
criminal,
criminal. It is
immoral, and
criminal.
criminal. Yeah. Amen. So tell me about, I'm very interested in how Nashville Propel, we talked about your mission just a little bit, but like, how did you organize and how did you put that organization together? Talk to me about Nashville Propel.
So, I mean, we're parent led, we're parent organized. In my previous work, I was a nurse, I was a researcher, um, and I worked at one of the largest cancer centers here in Nashville. And you could have never told me that I would be doing the work that I'm doing. So I showed up to this work with no experience, but I showed up to this work fighting. And I've had to invest in my leadership along the way. I've had to grow. I've made a lot of mistakes. There's things I know and there's things that I don't know. And what I do know is that I've never met a parent that didn't care for their child. And that inspires me each and every day. And that has inspired me from the beginning. And one of the things as a leader I needed to do was I need to listen to other parents. I needed to answer my hypotheses about, hey, am I the only parent that's going through this? No. And so I had to listen to thousands and thousands and thousands of parents. I tell you, when I started this work, when I Googled, I could not find a story that amplified the Black parent voice around reading, around low performing schools, any of that. I could not find one article that featured us. And so, number one, I wanted to make sure that I amplified the parents' voices here in Nashville. And one of the things that I did was I did what the words say with Emily, and I thank God for her coming all the way to Nashville and finding me. But I do that through storytelling. It just so happened I told my story and she was present. And so I make sure that parents are telling their story all around Nashville because if we don't tell it, someone else will tell it for us. And then I built relationships with parents in my community. Making sure that not only am I leading from in front, but I'm also leading from behind. And so developing their leadership
Mhm.
is my life's work.
That is interesting. We have a district-wide group and a statewide coalition, and I do think it's very interesting because you have to cultivate people behind you to take over as this emerges. Parents that still have children in the district, parents who've got, kind of skin in the game at the time. And so empowering and helping those parents to then do that work as well. It's a different skill set, but it's what you need to have that longevity in what you're doing.
Yeah,
That's
it's
interesting. You up?
I would say that's very necessary for sustainability.
Yes. And Emily Hampard, that's interesting that you say that. She came to speak with our parent group in 2017, Hard to Read, and did like that very first one on dyslexia. And that kind of piqued her interest. And then she did those four and then sold a story. And, but you've also been in like movies. Weren't you in The Truth About Reading? Uh,
Yes, and the truth about reading, and Soledad O'Brien's BET Disrupt and Dismantle. Yes,
okay. Well, thank you for that work.
thank you.
Another thing that, when you mentioned that you were a nurse, your background was in nursing. My background is in engineering. So science and continuously improving with new discoveries, better, more efficient ways to do things is normal. But I don't see that in education. Has that been, I think that's an advantage for you. Was your medical background an advantage for you in doing this work and the research, looking at the research?
I think several things. I think my church background of servanthood was probably the foundational thing, and my I would say my medical background around listening very carefully to people, to identify what the issue is so we can find a solution. And I would say my research background around data, um, that background has helped me when it comes to analyzing data and understanding that data helps us to make informed decisions. So I do think that I learned some skills along the way, even around policies and practices. That's one of the things that I did in my research, is to make sure that the centers that I consulted had policies and practices. So I say that to say a school district can't just say anything to me,
Yes.
because I'm going to pick that thing apart, because that's what I did for a living.
And we talk about like when parents come together in a parent group and do this work that you can utilize everybody's skills. Like different people have different skill sets. So you had a very unique skill set that had to just scare them to death when you came in to a meeting all over the
I
data.
don't know. I don't
Oh,
know. I always say that me, myself alone is not as powerful as the parents that I bring with me.
yes.
I am inspired, and I get this level of cockiness when I have my people with me, and this level of confidence that we can overcome anything. So I say I show up differently when I'm by myself than when I have those parents with me. You better watch out.
That's funny. I have like a list of reasons why it's good to bring parents with you. I didn't, that's another one I'm going to add to my list. But I know exactly what you mean. There's nothing worse than going in with just like one other person. When you have a whole group, yeah, it's a different conversation. I like
Yeah,
that.
that's organizing, right? That's
Yeah.
igniting a movement. And that is a big part of my mission. I mean, I don't do this for any celebrity or for me to get any kudos. I'm doing this to build a movement of parents,
Yeah.
who will demand better for all children. So it's just not about me.
Oh, absolutely. Do you tell me about you train your parents and you have cohorts. So talk to me about like a lot of ours is very sort of automated, and then we do some coaching with individual parent groups because we do it across the state and across the nation. But you have really focused in on Nashville. So tell me about the parent training and kind of the education and then the activating for advocacy that you do.
So first of all, I agitate parents. I want to make sure I agitate them. And sometimes that comes with awareness. Like people just don't know what they don't know.
Mhm.
I always say school systems are very, very wealthy.
Mhm.
They're very well. They have billion-dollar budgets. And so they have PR campaigns. I mean, in Nashville, there's nothing to see a bus in front of you, a city bus that's wrapped in an advertisement for a school. So, or ride past the interstate and there are billboards. So they are very wealthy and they're also good with PR, with public
Mhm.
relations and communications. And so they have the advantage to be able to amplify whatever it is they want to amplify. I'll give you an example. In Nashville, 87.5% of the kids are graduating on grade level. However, also in Nashville, 70% of the kids are not reading on grade level. So you do the math. So which
Mhm.
so which PR campaign are they going to run? 87.5% of the kids are reading on grade level. So just imagine riding past the interstate and seeing these billboards and everything that comes through the social media ads. It is amplifying that. And so nobody knows that this is going on. All they know is what the school district amplifies. But I come to disrupt that. I
Yeah.
always tell parents to question everything, question everybody, and there you know the truth. So you need to question the fact that 70% of kids not reading on grade level and 87.5% of the kids are graduating. That means we have more kids graduating unready and not ready than we have kids who are reading on grade level. And so I want to make sure that, first of all, people are aware that parents are telling stories that's connected to that information, right? And so I teach parents, first of all, how to do that. How do you do that? I think it's something that I have become well versed at is to be able to storytell. I am a storyteller. And so I make sure that I'm training my parents to tell their stories, but also I train them around advocacy and how to build campaigns. I just did it this past Saturday. I spent my Saturday from 10 to 2 with a group of parents, getting them ready for advocacy. And that takes time, it takes a lot of listening. It takes a lot of love.
Mhm.
We don't talk about that in this work enough. Sarah Carpenter, who's with the Memphis Lift, she really taught me that I have to do this work with love. And so I start off with love. You ask me, how do I do it? The first thing I do is love. And that's a lot of people to love. I've organized over 8,000 parents
Oh my
in
goodness.
the last 5.5 years. And so that's a lot of love that I've had to give a lot of people who needed it and a lot of people who deserved it. So I start with love. And then I sometimes have to reflect back when I first got started, how parents would come. I felt like I was the complaint hotline
Yes.
because they knew that they could come to me. They trusted me. They knew that and I was going to do something. So if your kid was being bullied, they weren't going to be bullied no more. So I became the complaint hotline, sort of. And I said, you know what? It's there's something there too, right? Where these parents have all these things happening, and then I'm trying to get them into advocacy. So they're hemorrhaging, but then I'm trying to teach them around, advocacy. And so, one of the things that we have started is our parent counseling program that will address not only issues around literacy, but also some of the socioeconomic issues that people face. Some of the public school choice issues that people face. And I'm gonna say, where it happens matters. Where it happens matters. I support public charter schools, just like I support public traditional schools. And where education happens matters. And I hold each of those schools accountable to ensure that they are delivering those foundational skills and good instruction equally. And
Yeah.
so, wherever a parent decides to take their kid, I never tell them where to take their kid, but wherever they take them, I want to make sure that that school is providing the skills that that kid needs so that that parent's vision for their child comes to pass.
And that has been tricky for dyslexic children because if a child goes to a private school, then the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, you cannot leverage that legislation on behalf of your child. So, but we've expanded now to work again with all kids. As you say, every child everywhere deserves to learn to read, and we need to hold every school responsible, whether we can sue them in that way or not. One of the things that you just said was very interesting to me. The If Nashville schools are telling everyone, you said 87% of kids graduate
80,
on.
I mean, let me give you right, 87.5 is what they tell us. Don't
And
forget the point five.
yeah, and a half. If that is not the case, I was down there just overnight a couple weekends ago. I'd never been, and my husband had a business meeting, and so um, we have a little Southwest card where I can fly free with him. So I just snuck in, and the city is booming. I mean, everybody is building a new. Uh, I don't even know. I think it's like Google, and I mean, you can just roll off all of the big Oracle. But if they knew that Nashville schools were not graduating, 87.5 kids. That's part of how the state is selling Nashville as a place to bring your headquarters.
So
That's
you can imagine that
economic issue.
nobody likes me. Nobody likes me.
Well,
Nobody. The mayor,
rude.
I don't think they like that I tell the truth.
Huh. Rather than try to change it or fix it, they just don't like you. Huh. How has
And I don't care.
I don't care. Yeah, you can't care. You cannot worry about what they say. How has Nashville changed? Have you been able to shift them? What impact is your work having on Nashville?
So, like I said, when we first started, like nobody was amplifying the voices of Black parents. Like nobody talked about, like people thought that this stuff was just happening to them and their child. There was a lot of parent shaming. I can remember our very first press conference was at a school board meeting. There was a superintendent that the board was wanting to oust, and we organized parents. We probably had about 50 parents there. And they began to just talk about his contracts and all this stuff. And we got up, we walked out, and all of the media followed us out. And boom, we had our very first press conference. And it was around how children were not the priority in our city. That we had the lowest, we had 18 low performing schools at that time in Nashville alone. In Nashville alone,
Wow.
and that no one was focusing on the students, that it was the adults who were infighting, and no one was making the kids a priority. I'll never forget that night. The lights, it was dark, and the lights came on, and parents began to tell their story. And that's how we got started, was amplifying the voices of parents. And we've continued to do that. Is to make sure that parents are telling their stories, and that we are telling our stories, whether it's local, state, or national, making sure we do that. And so that was the beginning of change in Nashville. To date, we have over 200 local media hits. When the media talks about education, they come through Nashville Propel, no matter what the topic is. And because we've built that legitimacy with the media, I would say our first campaign around personalized learning was our very first campaign, recognition from the mayor and everyone around our advocacy for personalized learning plans during the pandemic. We wanted to make sure, okay, everybody's assessing children, right? Like you go to the doctor's office and you sign in and you get assessed, right? But there's a plan of care that is put around that child, right? You don't just go in the doctor's office and get antibiotics. No, they have to be assessed. They have to have a plan of care. And so we said, well, our students coming out of the pandemic must have a plan, a personalized plan to make sure that all of their needs are being met. And so that was the very first policy win that we had here in Nashville. We also had some state win with that, where the state requires school districts in the state of Tennessee to do a personalized plan for students who are in tier 2 and tier 3 instruction.
Wow.
They're
Uh,
not reading on grading.
and that is similar to like an IEP for a child with dyslexia. So with a specific learning disability, an IEP is
They're,
a federal document. And you got it for kids who are just struggling, not technically dyslexic. That's huge.
yeah.
That is.
I believe every kid, I mean, every business has a business plan.
Mhm.
Every kid, when they start kindergarten, see, that's when you start to build the relationship and the engagement, which we can talk about that later, but I hate that word. The engagement, the partnership is what we need to build with parents. This is how school should look, and this is how we should start it, with developing a plan from kindergarten with every student that is inclusive of the parent.
Yeah.
Parents and teachers work closest to the student. And they have our kids more hours in the day during the school year than we do. And so there has to be some partnership there. And so there has to be some planning around that. There has to be some vision setting around it, not just goal setting, but what's the vision for this child? We birthed our babies, and they are our vision. They are little football players. They come out, these daddies see these big old hands on these boys. It's like, there's my basketball player, and there's my football player. That's a vision for that child. That's a parent saying, this is what I want to be true for this child. And I think that should be started from day one.
And what a beautiful, because you do come in with your child. In our experiences, you bring in this beautiful child, and the first time they hit school, and reading is what they have been, that's what their job is. And the reading instruction is outdated, not based on the science, then they create trauma in a child. And we have all experienced that in our district and our state. Um, I spoke to or there's a lot of discussion. I heard at a state school board meeting that children come into school with trauma, and that's why they can't learn to read. And we have to, in my opinion, dispel that, because many children come in beautiful, optimistic, darling little kids, and we hand them over and they shame and blame the kids and the parents, and they create trauma. Actually, the reading instruction is creating trauma. Do you see
It's
that?
all the more reason to make sure that a child reads if they're coming in with trauma. It's just no excuse. I love the first day of school. First day of school is one of favorite my favorite events during the school year. I will cancel my whole calendar to show up at the first day of school. And I'm gonna tell you why. First day of school, they got their little hair bows on, hair all greased down and looking good. little socks, little new shoes, backpacks, excitement, some uncertainty, newness. And what I realized is if I don't savor that time, I know what's going to happen. I know after they start to get into instruction, the morale of the child can be destroyed. And so, first day of school for me is a time for me to savor that beautiful moment. And I'm sorry, I'm almost in tears.
Oh, I know you're making me cry because you and you don't want it to be that way. But through this work, and this is like therapy for me because we had a similar experience and it haunts me. And so I do this work so that other people don't have to endure that as well. So thank you.
Yeah, by second grade, they hate school.
Yeah.
By second grade, they hate going to school because a lot of time they experience that's the place where they belittled.
Mhm.
And this is the thing. I love great educators. So this is not any this is not educator bashing
Yes.
at
Yeah.
all. This is truth telling of the damage. So they get to tell their story about trauma. My job is to tell about trauma from our end. So
Mhm.
they can so school districts, they get to tell, they get to say that they come in with trauma. Then we need to amplify the fact that they receive a lot of trauma when they go to school. And they receive trauma from people that like that care about them and who and sometimes want to be there. It does not take away the fact that they receive the trauma. Yeah.
And the yeah, this is it's there's so much that drives this work. I don't know, like I said, like guilt or shame but we come to this work in the same way in that I don't blame the teachers necessarily. The ones that I am actually livid with are the colleges of education that don't keep up with the science because the teachers pay very good money and spend a lot of time going to college, and they should be able to teach reading in the most effective way that we know how when they graduate. And the districts are having to untrain and to retrain them. And that is a travesty in itself. And then to harm our children, that is criminal. So whenever I have a chance to go in after the colleges of education, that's when I do it. I have
Yeah,
no
teachers most definitely have been victims. Like teachers
yeah,
most definitely have been victims of this. But I'm going to tell you something. By 12 noon, if you've gotten the information,
yep,
by 12 noon, you done got it. Then you got to start fighting for it too. Now, because I'm not going to.
yeah,
I'm I'm not going to let people off the hook either.
no,
Like because you know I've been talking about this for years. You've been talking about this for years. I mean, we got sold the store. We got all this stuff now. And so, wait a minute now. I'm not letting folk off the hook. So yeah, I'm gonna get to college and university, but when I talk to educators, I don't let them off the hook because now I'm telling you, I'm sitting here telling you, and maybe you didn't know, but
yes,
now that I'm telling you, now you know, now you're aware.
yes, yes.
Join the
And
movement.
yes, as you said, well, and Emily says, when you know better, do better. And we have the cutest one of the administrators in our district right now, and my code for the teacher being a terrible instructor is that they need more professional development. They just need more professional development. That means, and he said, actually, some people don't need to be teachers. Maybe they can go and sell cars. They just may not need to be teachers. So I actually think if we're really putting kids front and center, if they are the customer, the ultimate customer of the entire education system, then some of them may just need to go sell cars, get out of education altogether. So I'm with you.
Yeah, it's a systemic failure. Like
Yeah.
I look at this as a systemic failure, system failure. And that has always been my approach. It's a leadership issue. Like in the state of Tennessee, we have one of the best literacy packages, across the country. And so at this point, you know, we've got good curriculum. We got the assessments, right? We've got the interventions. We've got the professional development. We have what we need. And so the question is it being implemented with quality and fidelity? And so that's why we've been focusing through this current campaign on data transparency. Because we should see, we should be able to do some research with the data to see if all of those components are working.
And is it true that you are working to get a grade level, um, like rating or score or something on children's report cards in the state of Tennessee or something like that?
So we started in 2024 working with ROAR, which is a rapid online assessment with Stanford University. I met, people are like, how did you get in touch with ROAR? Well, ROAR found me. So I did some things with the ROAR staff. We did the South by Southwest panel together, and that just built a relationship of respect and partnership. And so we decided to do the Roar program and their Reading Reimagine program together. Reading Reimagine is it's a decodable tool that they have for preschoolers through kindergarten. And so I always think about everything that I do. It has to be mission driven. It has to be aligned with my priorities. So I don't do anything. If you hear me say anything that I'm doing, it's never just doing something. It always has to align with my priorities. And so, of course, we were focused on literacy, but I wanted to answer the question, how does a parent know the difference between a struggling reader and poor instruction? And so we knew that children were really struggling. So we gave them the assessment. We assessed 100 children in our community to see how the children were doing with this particular assessment. And I mean, our hypothesis was answered. But also we began to look at, okay, from a parent lens, are the parents really understanding? Is it clear? Right? Are they getting information that's understandable, that's timely and meaningful? And what I mean by meaningful is I have the information I need to advocate for my child, to ask questions and to get the answers that I need. And so what we quickly realized is we had this ROAR assessment report, and the parents were receiving a report from the district, from their benchmark. The parents did not understand the assessment that they were getting, or assessment results they were getting from the district. And so we worked with ROAR to create parent facing reports. So the reports that people, if you go on ROAR and you're doing their assessment, those reports were designed in partnership with Nashville P.R.O.P.E.L.
Wow.
And so we began to, and so then we surveyed, so 98% of the parents who allowed their children to take the assessment said that they understood our reports better. The other 2% said that they understood both of them. And so we began to say, okay, we've got a data transparency issue here where parents are not understanding the information. And so then we issue cut even more to what do parents receive? So we did a lot of research. I mean, there was research meetings across the district. There were research meetings with parents and grandparents and teachers and literacy coaches. Like there was a lot of time put into that.
Yeah.
And so we said, we've got a campaign here. What we have is parents are receiving misleading information. They're getting a report card. One of our parents, direct quote, was child was getting A's and B's on a report card, and his direct quote is, and he can't read the word cat. That's what he said. A's and B's on the report card, can't read the word cat. And so we began to launch a petition in the fall where our parents, they were getting this petition signed around this report card. We had already been to the school board. We wrote a white paper. We gave it to the school board. We asked for meetings, silence. Didn't want to talk to us. That's fine. But we were relentless. We were relentless. And so just so happened a state representative from Memphis, he signed our petition. He looked at that. He said, I am going to write a bill. And I am happy to say that our governor signed it a week and a half ago. It is law. The state of Tennessee, across every school district in the state of Tennessee, even in MNPS, and they didn't want to listen to us, they will have to provide a report card that identifies a child's reading level. And they have to put that assessment data on that report card or with that report card starting this fall 2025.
Oh my God, that is huge. Oh my gosh. Because all of that data, as you say, it's like, this scale means this and this scale means that. It's very hard to get through. So that's extraordinary. Do you know if you're the first state to do that? Because I
No.
was that.
There's other states across. I mean, in Memphis, they did it in Memphis. They had done it in Williamson County, but we were the first to get it done across the whole state. So our advocacy did it across the whole state. But no, there are other school districts that have this as a practice, as a policy. And so we did our research to see, who else is doing it, like our surrounding counties, like what are they doing well, right? Because you don't want to start doing stuff, and you don't want to start just advocating for stuff. That's what the research meetings came into play. Like, what are the best practices for parents? So we had to listen to parents. We had to look at what other report cards said, because our report cards basically just had the child's name, their grade, their attendance, the name of the class, and a grade. But then they would get a report, a benchmark report, which they get in the fall, the winter, and the spring because of the literacy law here. And it wasn't matching. So misleading parents, for months, and then getting to our state testing, our Tennessee Ready, and saying, hey, we may hold your child back. Unacceptable. Parents
Yeah.
need that information along the way, and they need to be able to ask questions. And so our next move is around implementation, making sure that all districts in the state of Tennessee are implementing this with quality and fidelity, that the parent voice is included in this policy and this practice, and also informing parents that they are supposed to receive this information. Because if we don't tell them, do you think the district is gonna wrap a bus and tell them? You think they're gonna run ads on their social media saying that information? Shh.
I-
I think not.
That's so funny because and Kareem Weaver and I are partnering on a few things. And one of the things he said that's interesting is that light is the best disinfectant. And so just by sharing the information, just shining a light on that can create a lot of change. But that sounds amazing. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have any other keys to effective parent advocacy? That's
I
so
think that one of the things we have to be careful about across all states, and I hope your organization thinks about this, is
yes.
possibility of states wanting to get rid of assessment data
Oh yeah.
and testing. That's a very dangerous move. And I do want to talk about that because I think it's something that we have to amplify across this country. Making sure that we have that data available to us is called truth in reporting. And so I'm listening to parents, and some parents, rightfully so, are like, hey, like, those state tests make my child nervous. And I understand. You know, when I went and took my state licensing board for to be a nurse, I was nervous. So I totally understand being nervous, right? That was my whole career on the line. However, that data is the only receipt that we have to ensure that schools are doing what they're supposed to do. Now, if somebody else comes up with another solution, I'm open to listen. But right now, in this moment, we are at risk of truly knowing if kids are struggling with dyslexia, other reading disorders, or if they're not getting the instruction that they need. Also, that data in most states is used to do merit raises for teachers. And so we're talking about teacher pay being in jeopardy because there's nothing to measure that around. And to do that with quality and fidelity, that data is used for to determine how well that teacher is doing in that classroom. And we want teachers to get credit where they deserve it, right? And so I think that needs to be more of the conversation. And I think people need to be on the lookout for that through their state legislation of wanting to get rid of that data. There was this past session, I think that there was a bill around it, although it did not pass. I want people to be aware across this country that this is taking place in their state legislator and they may legislative office and they may not even know. And so until somebody has a solution that is a viable a solution, a sustainable solution, a solution that keeps us getting our NAEP data, keep getting our state data and our local data, we cannot allow state legislators to take that narrative and run with it in that way. So I really want to caution people around that.
I have the same concern, especially around NAEP, because in Ohio, what they do, so the NAEP just sort of in general, a third of kids are proficient, a third are basic, and a third are below basic. But if you look at the Ohio data, um, it's many more are proficient, but it's because they chop up their data to make it look better. So they say below basic, basic, and then they say nearly proficient, almost proficient, proficient, very proficient, super proficient. So it looks like, like two-thirds of the kids are proficient or half. And real data, as you're saying, is critical. So I would agree. We'll have to keep an eye out for that in our listeners. That's good to raise the alarm. Do we know anything about NAEP yet? I know that
It's in jeopardy. I mean, there's some jeopardy around it because of the current administration and the uncertainty around the Department of Ed. And so that's data that we need. We need that historic data so that we don't have issues in the future. And any gap in receiving that data gives us a gap and the information we need to be informed for later decisions. And my hope and my prayer is that people understand that data informs us. Data helps us to see trends where we can identify issues and problem solve. And so parents are usually not in the mix of that, right? That's not usually like something that we wake up and do. But what keeps me up at night is that if we do away with that data, then we will leave behind children from our most struggling communities, both Black, white, Latino.
yeah,
Like I'm gonna say this now, I tell all Black folk, you Black, you from a struggling community. But we got white folk from struggling communities too.
yeah,
And they don't always mean money.
yeah,
That could be other resources. That could be in your community where there's no dyslexia laws. You are in a struggling community.
yeah,
So when I say that, I am covering a lot of people when I say that
yeah,
who are from struggling to get the instruction they need, struggling to get the food they need, all of those things. And all of that data It's very important. I'm a former researcher. I understand. I mean, I did research on cancer drugs for many years. And so all of that historic data allows us to not make the mistakes that we made in the past, but it also holds people accountable for doing what they say they were going to do. Public education, I'm going to tell you this, is the biggest heist I ever seen. It's the only government ran agency that can say they're going to do something and never have to do it. They never have to do it. We're going to teach children how to read and never have to do it. Never have, they can say it all day long and never have to do it. And so parents, we need that data to stay across every state. We need to be able to compare and contrast. I need to see what's going on in Ohio. You need to see what's going on in Tennessee, because that way you know whether, what is better look like. And if you don't have that, you don't know what better. You'll think 30% of the kids reading on grade level is excellent, because I guarantee you they're going to make it sound good, but it's only a dirty suit, a clean suit on a dirty body. And President Obama said it's lipstick on a pig. So we have to fight for that data.
I agree 1,000%. I have been very strong in our district about, or one of the things that they do in Ohio too is they change the state report card for your district. So they'll do stars sometimes, and then they'll do letter grades for sometimes. And I tried to look over, a long period of time how the district was doing when we implemented science of reading and what the effects were. And because they change so often, it's very difficult to do that. So looking at trends and the past, as you say, is critical. Because then how do you know if what you're doing is working? Any
How
changes?
does a parent know the difference between a struggling reader and poor instruction? One word that I can't stand is approaching. What does that mean?
Oh, yeah.
What does it mean to be approaching? What does it mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that mean? That's why either your child is reading on grade level or they not.
Well, and this has dire circumstances. Isn't it in Tennessee where there is a young man who sued because he graduated and was reading at like a third grade level or
More
fourth grade?
people should sue.
I
I could have sued, but and you know what? I admire the bravery of that family. I did not sue because I felt like I would just be suing I would be satisfying myself. So I decided to build a movement. I decided to raise money and build a movement. But more the district, because of that, what that bravery from that family, they've set a precedence.
yes,
And so the only thing is most families don't have the money to lawyer up and do that. And so that's why it's important for parent advocacy organizations like us to keep doing the work that we're doing. And it's important, and I hope that somebody that funds works hear this. It's important that you fund work for Nashville P.R.O.P.E.L and for Brett's organization. It's important that you invest in our organizations so we don't lose that advocacy, because without parents, it's just gonna get worse. And I believe that our advocacy has made things better for children. And so if you are someone who wants to invest in our work, you will not be wasting a dime. If you do so, you will have the biggest powerful impact on society ever. Mhm.
I agree. I agree 100%. And I think, as you say, until I think parents, and I talked to Kate Walsh about this, the former president of NCTQ. I think parents are kind of the missing link. And I think until we do educate and activate parents, I don't know that, a lot of people in this echo chamber, science of reading, this is going great, everything's moving along. But if you talk to parents on the front lines,
The story.
oh, we've got a lot of work to go. We've got a long way to go. And parents are the ones who who live it 24/7, 365. A lot of people go into this, it's their day job, and then they go home to their little life. We live it all the time. And that's why you're relentless. That's why I'm relentless. And we need that. We also have the electoral power and the legal rights that we can leverage in this work. So I love it. And I am so excited to be able to lift up your powerful work, and honored to work with you on the EAC. So thank you so much. Is there any last? You are an amazing storyteller. I could listen to you all day long, and I have so much fun with you. Is there any last word that you would like to share with our listeners?
I would say if you're feeling afraid, look at these two women. There's times that we've been afraid, but together we can get it done. So you don't have to know everything. When I came into this work, there was a lot I didn't know. I would say if you want to advocate for children, do it. Be fearless about it. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know all of the lingo with the science of reading. But if you have a heart for kids, push past that fear, join our perspective movements, and join the fight, and we'll do this together. And I'm saying it from the bottom of my heart. So
Yeah.
thank you, Brett, for the opportunity to speak to mothers and fathers across this country and to say we can do this together. We can do this together. If we all bind, it's more of us than those who are protecting the system.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. Literacy Now is a podcast designed specifically for parents in our effort to ensure every child learns to read. Parents deserve a seat at the table, and we bring their voices to the fore. We invite you to join the Parents for Reading Justice community on all of our socials, and make sure to visit our website to watch our documentary and to take our masterclass. All of our content is free of charge because every child deserves to learn to read. This episode was brought to you by parentsforreadingjustice.org, produced by Brett Tingley and Keita Mascaro.